In this video, I will be going over and briefly explaining the various creation tools in Planetoid Pioneers. And before we start, a quick overview of the primary hotkeys for editing. F2 will open the editing menu, F6 will open the saved files, and F9 will reset the scene. The scene is the planet in this instance. Now, I'm going to start by loading the automatic plasma rifle in. Should be at the top here. And we can name this like test piece for purposes of the video. Now if we take a look at, start with the blueprint tags. The blueprint tags are for purposes of the script. The script will read it as tool. And it's for scripting variables. So the code can interact with the object. Now this blueprint will start as dead. Doesn't matter. That determines whether you want to control it with the keys in the game. It says there, you know. Will be added to the player's menu and atomized, means if you destroy it in game, which I can give you an example of. If I destroy it with the laser in game, I can now in game craft it. You see, because I have it set to atomize. Now, the name of the blueprint, you don't want to change that because that will mess with the script. You'll have to replace them. Scale blueprint determines the size in this menu that it appears at. Blueprint notes, just notes. Hue is to do with colouring. Update, even when out of sight, means if it's not on your screen, it'll still roll around and interact with physics. You don't want that on for lag purposes, really, for performance reasons. Now, the MO texture is what will appear in game. It's also the collision. I can show you the collision hitboxes. They are done by these things called triangles. They are important, and I'll go over those a bit more in a second. You can edit the scale, orientation, and position here. Master object is important. If the master object dies, the tool or weapon or vehicle or whatever will cease to function. It breaks. Delete hidden MOs when dead will, because you can have additional objects in here. So if I want to add a scope to it, I could create a new object, put the scope as the texture, join it on, and that will delete those when they're dead. The joints are very important. They determine where they lock onto on your character model. So the tool mount back, I don't know too much about this, to be honest. But those are very important. They what hold it together, and they are the joints that it rotates by on the player model. I'm not too good at joints, so move on to particles. Particles are what come out the barrel and such. We've got rifle rounds, which are the projectiles that are shot. Smoke, which is an effect that comes off the barrel. Grenades is the alt fire for it, and it has a laser sight. Lights, this doesn't have any lights, but lights would enable you to, you can make it glow, you can make it have like a spotlight on the front or a torch, give it a subtle glow. You could do any number of things with lights. They're lights. Poses are for mainly for animations. You can set multiple poses and then play them in a order to show an animation. This weapon, as I will show you, only has the one pose, which is the holding pose. You could probably get multiple poses, so you can have it at the ready, or on your back perhaps. But this doesn't come with them by default. The sound sets are for script purposes. The sound set can interact with these variables. The script can interact with these sound sets in order to play grenade sounds and such. Well, in this case, grenade sounds. Whatever sound you set it to, really. Script I will go over later. That is the actual scripting for it. That's what lets it shoot, that's what lets me hold it, etc. I'm going to go into arguably the more important for creating a weapon, at least, is particles. We look at the tool rifle rounds. These are the plasma bolts that are coming out the front of the gun when I'm firing it. We'll look at charred particles in a minute. Rendering layer determines what layer the particles are on. So if I have multiple particles coming out the barrel, it determines which one is seen at the front. Rendering scene determines if they're visible in the world. Rendering light map lets them interact with shadows and things. yeah, cast shadows, creating light, depending on how you've set them up. The texture can be whatever you want it to be. If you press assign selected texture, you will open up the list of textures in the game, which you can just look through, pick a texture you like, click it, move the box out of the way, and then assign selected texture, but I don't want to do that at the current moment in time. Multi-textures, you can have multiple textures at once. It can either cycle through them using enable frame animation, or you can just layer them on top of each other. Particle color, if I make it emit, so that it fires repeatedly, particle color will adjust the color of the particle according to what I set it to. So now it's blue and white. Blend mode are like shaders for the particle. So you look, additive 7 makes it look crazy. And it gets more and more ridiculous the further you go. Particles orientation are kind of like shaders. I'm not too sure what they do. I think it determines how it rotates while it's moving. You can have it stretch by speed, so if you want it to, you know, elongate when being fired, you can do that. Turn it off completely. Doesn't do anything. Oh, that's way too high. 0.03. Trail is a trail behind the particle. If I turn that off, I don't think it has one at the moment. It does have a trail. If I up the trail length to like 5, increase the width by a fair bit, you can see the trail coming behind each projectile. The trail's what makes it look. You can give it that matrixy look. You can give smoke effects behind missiles, that sort of thing. You can also have it multiply the width of the trail depending on the particle size. So if you have varying particle sizes, which is something you can do, it will stay consistent. The glow enables you to have the projectile glowing. If we turn that off, you'll notice they lose their glow. These are all just cosmetic features to make the projectile look better. Emitting is the really important bit. The start speed determines how fast the projectile is moving up the barrel. If I set to 40, they fall at the front. Set to 400, they hit warp speed. Set to 10, they just dribble out the barrel. You can set them to scatter. So if I set the scattering to 50, and then increase the spark speed to 150 again, they all go everywhere. If I set the neck to 0, it will be completely random. Every shot will go in a random direction. Size on emit, you can change that to make the projectiles massive if you like. Particle weight determines how much they weigh. This is accounted for when doing recoil for the weapon. So if I make them weigh, let's be ridiculous. Let's make it weigh 500 kilos with realistic recoil. Not 13. We hit save. Go back to the main menu and then insert one, the insert key. Oh bloody hell! I've left the emitter. Okay. Right, if we go back into tool rifle rounds, turn off emitting, and then spawn one. If you leave emitting on, it will just emit uncontrollably. You'll see that it has quite a lot of recoil, to the point where we can almost fly with it. Oh, we fall into a cave. So yeah, you don't want to set your recoil too high, because you will be able to take off with it. Which, in some situations, may be advantageous. Anyway, back to it. So yeah, recoil is important. Emitting by time, if you want it to pulse, like it was earlier, you can have it do that. So you can have it go 13 to 14 seconds. So if I set the 13 to 5 seconds, sometimes it shoots quickly, sometimes it slows down, you know, 13 to 1. Sometimes it might rapid fire, sometimes it will shoot one every now and then. You get the idea. Emit count, you can increase the amount of projectiles it shoots every shot. Of course, we could boom the projectiles. If we up the boom count as well, it will shotgun 15 projectiles. But 15 times 15, it gets a little bit ridiculous. Or if I set it to shoot 1, then it will just boom the 15 projectiles. Emitting trail particles, I'm not too sure what that does. When check the trail particles emitted. That's for child particles. No worries. Child particles is a whole different thing. If I want my projectile to explode into smaller ones, I'd create a second projectile up here, and then use this menu to to make it so that if the parent particle dies, it spawns more, or if it hits the surface, you know, the child particles come into existence. Or you can have them emit if it takes too long, and other such things. Bounce is primarily damage in interaction with terrain. You can have it bounce off terrain objects. You can have it not bounce off the blueprint. If I turn that off, it might ricochet off the body if the firing piece was further back. Disappear after the first bounce stops them ricocheting around the room. Deform power causes it to dent and warp other objects that you fire them at. Sharpness will cut things, you know, is just general damage. Penetrating particles lets them go through objects and out the other side, dealing damage on each end. Dent and holes lets it blow holes and dent things. Lifetime. If we set a lifetime, make it nice and low, say, I don't know, 0.3 to 0.3, maybe even lower than that, because these things move fast. They should, oh my god, I need to make it really low, oh no, 0.1, 0.1. They'll die out shortly after leaving the barrel, because we've applied a lifetime to them, as you see. Sizing gives a varying size to each shot that comes at the barrel. Gravity is gravity, I can turn it off and they'll fly in a straight line forever. Air friction makes them reduces speed in the air. Now I can use angle tracker, and this is cool. If I set the angle tracker out to 5 and then make it do that, you'll see them they wiggle around a little bit, which is interesting to say the least. The waves, a varying number of effects you can put on it. Make them zigzag, little lightning bolts, all kinds of interesting things. So yeah, angle tracker is amusing, making things like lightning guns. Color blink, make the colors blink randomly on the projectiles. Heat makes it apply temperature, so it'll heat up an object and possibly melt it if you heat it up too much. Acid will corrode things. Explosions are explosions. Scaling, you can change the master scaling to make everything bigger, but I wouldn't mess with that because it damages everything. Sound sets, so you'll hear the button you press. That'll be the shot sound, and you have the hit sound. Those are all, you know, those are given their role in the sound effects section. So each particle emits shot. Upon particle death, it emits hit. If that makes sense. That's pretty much everything in this section.